So, welcome to this episode of Investors Hangout, brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. I'm Rachel, and with me is Dhirendra Kumar, the CEO of Value Research. Welcome, Dhiren.
Thank you.
All right, so in this episode, we're going to be talking about the current crisis and your emergency fund. Now, any financial plan always starts with setting up an emergency fund that can cover your expenses. And a lot of our readers are aware of this and do have an emergency fund in place, while there are others who, in the current crisis, are now struggling to somehow use their existing investments to create resources that can be available, for use in the present time. Now, Dhirendra, if you could tell us how large should this emergency fund be, and also how critical is it as part of any financial plan?
One is that, the criticality bit is the most important. One is that you should not start investing till you have this essential emergency fund, because any of your investment plan will go haywire, will derail, because emergencies don't come with notice, as we are just experiencing now. And and if you don't have that, then the finest of investment plan will go haywire simply because you need the money now and you don't have it. And if it is invested in a manner which turned out to be not bankable enough for the short run, then you will be just acting in panic. So without emergency fund, you can't really start your investments. Of course, there are other things too. And I think, as the emergency package, so to say, I would say the emergency fund, health insurance, because that is also an emergency and that also can potentially derail your investment plan. And also term insurance, because it takes time to accumulate your savings for it to be meaningful enough, which can take care of your family if you're not around. So if you have financial dependence, even that. So that is the emergency package. But the cash in hand, the essential emergency, is something which you must provide. Otherwise, you will not be able to stick around. The kind of market that we have seen, the finest of investment plan will. Your patience will be tested, your tolerance will be tested, and you will not be able to stay the course. So to stay the course, you must have the emergency fund. Now, it is not up to an expert to really tell you that what should be the scale of your emergency fund. Emergencies can actually be of any kind, as we realize now that, a lot of people will be worried about their job. So if you are in a job or in a career where you might have to worry about it, then the scale of emergency could be different. If you have young children, you need to have a higher, you have to really account for that. If you run the risk of, if you have dependent parents, old parents, and they depend on you, then you have to worry about it differently. So, because those emergencies needs to be factored in. So I would say that, and if you are in a government job, you are unlikely to lose your job, and so that's one aspect. If you have a healthcare provided by your employer, and your employer is bankable enough, you don't have any worries about that, then so the whole complexion, actually, the need for emergency, the scale of emergency fund that you might have changes depending on these circumstances. So do it more, and err on the side of caution. Just be a little more conservative. If you think that you need to plan for, you might lose your job sometime, there is such a possibility, then don't even think of 6 months, think of 1 year. I don't know what circumstances will be. So be a little conservative. And it is not that all the money has to be, lying in your locker. Those money will also be invested. Just that, it will be invested conservatively and it will not be dependent on the state of the market very heavily. So you need to really work on that small plan and don't into long-term investing till you have a solid, because this is the basic foundation on which you build your finances.
All right. And then how should this emergency fund be allocated? Like, where should it be saved or invested?
Kept, of course, first saved, and where to be kept and where to be invested. These are two parts to it. One is that if you have young children and old parents and you visualize some emergencies that can come your way, then put some of it in your locker, put some of it in your cupboard or in your wallet. Then a small part should always be kept in your bank account, which is accessible with an ATM card. So that's the second level. And the money for which you might need some notice, which you will give a notice, put that money in a liquid fund. So you have, locker, wallet, and yeah,
Yeah.
liquid fund, and some money lying in the bank account, which is accessible always. These are three things. And the scale of money in the liquid fund, that how much it should be, basically the risk of losing your job, and the risk of running out of that money,
Right.
that you have to estimate little carefully. 6 months, 1 year, I don't know. If you are self-employed, then your scale of emergency fund has to be different, because you not only don't have to provide for your family or your income need, but also the essential cost which you have to provide for. So it depends on person to person, your own circumstances, your own situation. But these are the three things, and all the three things, you might feel that the money lying in your locker is not earning anything, but the idea is not to earn anything. The idea is to actually buy peace of mind, and that is the cost. That opportunity loss is the cost of buying that peace. The money lying in the savings bank account, ability to have not having the money when you need it most, is a big deprivation. Likewise, liquid fund. Uh, Somebody might say that that is also invested, and it is subject to risk. The scale of risk you are exposed to in liquid fund is something which will not disappoint you.
Right.
The worst case scenario, assuming a negative return, but you don't lose your capital doesn't get stuck, you're accessible. The magnitude of decline that can happen in the worst case scenario is of a kind which will not break your plan. So these are the only simple things which one should follow, and not try and over engineer it.
Right. Right. And now, Dhiren, with this crisis now upon us, would it be too late for investors to create an emergency fund like right now if they have to?
You don't have a choice, and it's never late to do it, to implement the basic simple idea. And if somebody doesn't have the emergency fund,
Hmm.
then you will panic all through this crisis, and even some opportunity which will come your way, you will be ignorant about it, or not in a position, you will not be in a mental framework to benefit from that.
Right.
So it's never too late to implement a good plan, the
Hmm.
essential.
Hmm.
So do it now
All right.
if you have.
All right, thank you, Dhiren. So we now move on to the questions which our viewers have sent us. So the first one is from Ravi Shinde, and he says, owing to the current lockdown, I have had to shut my shop. Though I have an emergency fund in place and also several other investments, I don't know how to plan my short-term expenditures. Part of my emergency fund is in my bank, which should be adequate for maybe 2 months, but the remaining is in debt funds which were recently affected by credit events. If I take out this money, I may not benefit if these issues are resolved in the future. What should I do?
Create a hierarchy of your investment. Good that you have that emergency 2 months money requirement in your bank account. Then create the set of investment, and even the debt fund. If you have a debt fund which had a credit issue, and the money which got stuck in that fund, of the money which was invested by the fund, which has, if it is meaningful, then it would have been side pocketed. So you will not be deprived of that opportunity. So you can take your money out from the debt fund, and the pocket is your asset. As and when it will get resolved, you will get your money back. So create this list of the relatively short term, the investment which can be realized in the short term as well, without much of an impact. Also, if you look at even the credit event, subsequently, very recently, the rate cut and everything, the emergency measures taken by the government have actually boosted the return of some of these investments. So a lot of your losses will also be marginalized even in those. Also, the magnitude of decline that we see in debt fund in the worst case scenario is not all that bad. We see a 1%, 2% decline, which is tolerable. Of course, I'm not saying that it is desirable or it is justified, but it is tolerable. It does not really impair your capital. So create a hierarchy of withdrawal of those fixed income schemes from which can be turned, or you can internally or mentally earmark them as your emergency fund, and need it as and when you require.
All right. Dhiren, and with the safety being such a priority with an emergency fund, are these debt funds really worth investing in for an emergency fund? Or Like
Oh
he's
yes,
found. Okay.
yes. People are caught unaware with the equity investments. The scale of decline in such a brief period
All right.
has been very, and subsequent, recent days, the kind of up and down that we are witnessing every day, which is very
All right.
nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
But that one should not extend the same thing to fixed income investment, the debt funds,
All
simply
right.
because they are not that volatile. Once in a while, and we have seen the surge as well. Interest rates going down, they are gaining in value of late. Even the ultra short term bond fund went up by 1% in a day, the day
Right.
the rate cut. So in that sense, the likelihood of your significant impairment of your fixed income investment
Mm-hmm.
is not that significant. I think, but at the same time, err on the side of caution. You have overnight funds where
Mm-hmm.
the risk is virtually nothing, negligible. It's the money is invested in the overnight securities, call money on a overnight basis with the banks. So I don't think there's much to worry there. Likewise for liquid fund, they're reasonably safe. And at most, move to ultra short-term bond fund with your choice. There are 16 kind of debt funds. And if you limit yourself to these three, I think you are reasonably insulated from any significant risk.
All right. Thanks, Ren. Now, Chandra, who is a 79-year-old government pensioner and a retiree, he says, where can I park rupees 10 lakh safely in the present circumstances?
Uh, it entirely depends. Having 10 lakh rupee and 79-year-old is not complete information for me. But assuming that you want it to be very safe and maybe ultra short-term bond fund, look don't further beyond that. But I would like to know more information, like for a 79-year-old person, two, three things which comes to my mind. If this money is going to be your emergency fund, then let it be only in the ultra short-term bond fund or liquid fund. If this is a long-term investment,
Mm-hmm.
then I would urge him to invest this money. If this is money which is unlikely to lay his hands on, I would like him to, and he's unlikely to need it. He wants to leave it as a larger, bigger state for his children. Uh, then this money should actually be, one should be investing confidently in balance fund. There are ways of doing it to reduce your risk. Spread this investment over the next 18 months. Before that, put that money in a liquid fund and spread that money in, in do a STP from that liquid fund to a balance fund.
Mm-hmm.
But only in case this is a long-term money, he's unlikely to need it anytime. Just
Right.
because the market circumstances are very different, your choice should not be dependent on that.
All right. Thanks, Dhiren, and thank you so much for watching. And do continue to send in your questions. We will be answering them on a regular basis. Goodbye for now.
Thank you.